You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your host, Keith Wheeler.
And Nuria Corby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today is a really exciting one for me because we're talking about the top 100 books on Amazon. So these are the books that are selling the most on Amazon. And I think that's really interesting. I love looking through them. Do you do that as well?
I do. I like to look, especially when I'm trying to think of a new niche. Then, it's good to look at the top 100. You can also drop down into different niches if you already, know that you want to do a children's book or you want to do, a nonfiction book. You can drop down into those categories and see the top 100s there. So we're going to look at the top books on Amazon as of March in 2025. Obviously, it changes every day. And so we probably aren't going to get into all 100, or this will be a very long episode. But yeah, we're going to go through and for you listeners, we're going to describe what we're looking at, things that we think are helping it sell. So I'll jump right in.
Let's have a look.
For those people who have never looked at the top 100 on Amazon, you just go to Amazon in whatever country you're at is your marketplace. At the top, there should be a thing that says bestsellers. If you click on that, you can scroll to either books or the Kindle store if you're looking specifically for ebooks. I will be honest, on the Kindle store, typically the top 100 is mainly dominated by romance. So unless you write romance, you'll probably want to drop down to a subcategory. But for books, it's more of a wider array. So that's what we're going to look at today is the bestsellers in books.
So we've got the top 100 in front of us. And for those of you who are listening, we're going to try and describe it as much as we can as well, so that you know what we're talking about. And what I always like to do is when I go on the top 100, I just quickly scan all the books, and then usually something stands out for me. Very often I find that I see that there's a lot of children's books.
Right.
And sometimes it's dominated by coloring books. So every time I look, it's slightly different. And I can see today there's a lot of Easter themed books already in the top 100. So it's always a good idea to look here on the top 100 to see what's coming out new, what's seasonal as well, because during Christmas you'll see a lot of Christmas books.
Right.
And at the moment, as I said, there's a lot of Easter themed books out there. And I think it's a really good exercise to do now and again, just to look and see what's actually selling, because we have to remember these are books that are selling and that are selling quite a lot. So
exactly,
you can't go wrong looking at them.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to seasonal, you might see books on here that you might have never even thought of doing a book on, or you might have thought of, yeah, maybe, but how often do people buy that kind of book? And so, for example, right now we're seeing just in the top 8, we're seeing quite a few children's Easter themed books. Maybe it's too late for you to create one for this year, but the great thing is these seasons come every single year. So you can write it on your list of things to do for next year, because now you've proven that that people are interested in it. And even if it's an odd holiday or something like that maybe is in the top 100 this year, but you're worried that next year it won't be. But even if it's not in the top 100, it's still going to be popular. If it's popular this year, it's most likely going to be popular next year, even if it's not as much. So it's better than just going in blind and just creating a book, out of the blue that you just came up with, which, not that there's anything wrong with that, but getting proof that these types of books sell is a way to kind of already set yourself up for success without even, creating the book yet.
Mm, absolutely. And talking about creating seasonal books, and you said there's always next year, and that is so important, because I like to create seasonal books at least 3 months in advance of the event. So, I mean, I would be too late now to create an Easter book, but saying that, I would still create it because, like you said, there's always next year.
Right.
And it's better to create it than not creating it. So even if I just create it now and it sits there for a whole year, it's not ideal, but I would still probably do it just because if I'm in the mood to create an Easter book, I would probably still do it, and then it will sell for next year. And also saying that, it's really funny. We've got some Halloween themed books and they sell all year round. And I never understand how that can happen, but it does. So it doesn't necessarily limit you to anything.
Right.
There are all sorts of reasons why people buy books. And it's always, I would say it's advisable to create them about 3 months in advance of the holiday or the event. But if you miss it, it really doesn't matter because it's coming round again. And time goes so quickly. Before you know it, it's that time of year again. Yeah.
Yeah. What I would do, I do most of my content that I create are evergreen, but I do create seasonal ones. And in a case like this, if I saw something and I was like, oh, that's really selling, but it's too late for me to create it now, I would still create it because I'm still in that mindset. But I would actually do one thing different than what you were saying is I would actually not publish it until it gets to the 3 months beforehand. So that way, when it does come out, it's still something that's upcoming. And because it's the first 30 days that your book is out there, then you've got, the new release categories that you're in as well. And so you kind of get that buzz going already, and Amazon can start, the algorithm can start learning who your book is for and showing it while it's, again, in that first 30 days. So like you were saying, if you've got, you see that it's there, you see that it's something that's hot, and now you're in the mood to create it, just create it, have it done and ready, and maybe, and already upload it to KDP. And then all you have to do is, click publish when, like you said, about 3 months beforehand.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And this is it. I mean, if you're in the mood to create something, that's the best time to create something because you're getting your best ideas, and it's much easier to create something that you really want to create than creating a book just because you feel you should be creating it. So there's a big difference. So yeah, you can create it and just have it created and then ready to upload when the time comes. So yeah,
and also if you're anything like me, it's very easy to have a long list of to-do books, books that it's on my list, whereas if you're in the mindset just doing it now, then it's off your list. All you have to do is just, publish it, and just remember to publish it, set a, reminder on your calendar or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So looking at the bestsellers, the first one is Sunrise on the Reaping, which is from Suzanne Collins, very well-known author. So it's not surprising that they're at the top. They're number one, and they have, thousands of reviews. If you're seeing my screen and you're wondering how I got all this extra stuff, I'm using a free Chrome extension called DS Amazon Quick View. It just shows me all the information from the book description section right there on this main page, so I don't have to see what categories they're in or anything else. It's all right here. But yeah, so like you said, the first one is that I love the array of colors.
Yes. Yeah, I do look at book covers as well and what colors they use and the fonts, and it's looking very colorful. The first sort of 8 books that we can see on our screen, and they vary. I think what we have to sort of look at is the niches they're in, because obviously the children's books that we can see are very colorful. They've got a certain style. And then the fiction book, which is the first one you mentioned, Sunrise on the Reaping, that one has got, I find that at the moment there are a lot of purpley books in fiction.
Right.
Do you find that as well? I've noticed that golden
yes.
and purple seems to be the thing now.
Yeah. And those are the two colors really that are in this golden, purple.
Yeah.
And they've got, definitely, I mean, Suzanne Collins is not new to the industry. So she, the covers that she has are, very, very striking. And, even the background isn't just a purple, it's got, other images behind it, kind of just set back.
Yeah. It's not a flat.
Right. With transparencies
background.
And things like that. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree, especially in fiction, there, romance and that kind of stuff. There definitely seems to be this ongoing thing where, purple and gold seem to be the trend right now.
Yeah.
And, so one would argue that maybe, spicing things up a little bit different would make your book stand out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes it's good to fit in, but you also have to stand out. So it's a tricky one. Right next to the number one book is the number two book, and that's a non-fiction book by Mel Robbins. I love Mel Robbins. I follow her on Instagram and Facebook. And they're sort of, would you call them self-help books in that sort of broad category? Motivational self-help, that sort of thing. And if you look at the cover design, it's a bright green with a really big font that's shining out. And that, again, I find is a really big trend in non-fiction at the moment, is to have really big fonts, just have the title, not much imagery on the cover. And they tend to be very nature-inspired colors, like the greens, the browns, the
yellows,
yellows, reddish, autumnal colors as well, or spring-like colors.
Right.
So it's a good example of a book that does stand out, because a lot of other non-fiction books that I see are quite plain, like that. Again, there's not much imagery, so the color is really what's making this one stand out. I don't know if you can see at number 6 there's Atomic Habits.
Yeah,
and that
I was just looking at that one.
Yeah, that one is just following me everywhere. Not only do I see it on Amazon all the time, it's always, if not in the top 10, it's in the top 20 every week so far that I've been looking. And I see it in bookshops, wherever I go. It's following me in the supermarket. It was as well when I looked. So that is obviously a book that is selling quite a lot. But how different is the cover to the other one? This is like really muted, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's almost blending into the background. So I would have said to someone, I would have said to someone, if they had shown me that design, I would have said, oh, that's going to blend in too much in the background with Amazon. I would make that a little bit more, a bit more colorful. But then what do I know? Look how much it's selling. Well,
and it's not just Atomic Habits, but I mean, Atomic Habits right now is on number 7. But if you look 5, 6, and 7, all really have that, basically that white background. But it does make the words pop out. And again, unlike with Mel Robbins' book, even the words are not super big. I mean, Atomic Habits is somewhat big, but the other ones, I mean, they're obviously, they stand out. They're clear, but again, the backgrounds are pretty much white.
Yeah.
So but one thing I did notice, going back to Mel Robbins, and same thing with Suzanne Collins, same thing you'll see with Stephen King, is that their names are prominent because their names are basically their brand. That's it. And so it's, one might think that, I'm just now starting out, I'm a nobody, I'm not going to put my name that big because, it's, no one knows who I am, but everybody has to start there. Yes. So the important thing is, if it's a niche that you plan on being, creating multiple things in, and you want to build a brand, having continuity with your design, with, what name you go by, how it looks on the book, where it's placed, all of that is all part of branding. And so that's something that I noticed that the first two books that, the top two books, bestsellers in books on Amazon, that's something that they have in common, is that their author name is big. And, it's regardless of what book you get from Suzanne Collins, the font type is going to be the same. It's usually going to be white from what I've seen, and it's going to be pretty much in that exact same spot. So again, it's something that people can get used to, and subconsciously, most people don't even realize it's like that, but subconsciously it just makes it feel more comfortable.
Yeah, that is a really good point, and it's exactly what branding is all about. And I think it's funny about the size of the font for the author name, because when I've just actually today finished the cover for my latest book, and I've got my own name in very small letters on the cover, because basically my thinking behind that is people don't really know who I am. So for me, it was more important to let the title be the thing that catches the eye more than my name. Once I become famous, I will make the name a lot bigger. But at the moment, I think the title is what's going to sell the book rather than my name. Whereas for Mel Robbins or for James Clear or any of the other really well-known authors, their name is what sells their books.
Right.
So for that reason, they should have their author name in really big, bold letters on the cover. Because it doesn't matter if you're following an author, or if you really like an author, you don't even care what the book is, really. You just want their next book. Exactly. So that's why the author name is so important in their case. So it really depends where you are on the scale of authorship, really. And
specifically within that niche that you're in.
Exactly.
Like, for example, I write in multiple genres. My children's books, my names aren't as large as they are on my nonfiction books, because my nonfiction books are for authors and self-publishers, and because I have a following there, they know me, so that my name is important to my brand.
That is a really good point. And you can see that, if you scroll through all the books, it's something that's very common. The more famous the author is, the bigger the font, I think.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the size of the font that Stephen King has on his book?
You're right.
Stephen King usually is almost as large, if not larger, than the title of the book. It's crazy.
The title is secondary.
Right. Exactly. Because like you said, people that follow Stephen King, they're going to buy whatever book he writes, regardless of, what the real topic of it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice to see that 3 books in the top 10 are children's books. So that's quite nice to see as well, because that gives us a feeling of, it's a fact that children's books are good sellers. I think there's a big market for children's books, and that is usually reflected in the top 100. And especially today, every day is different when you're looking, but today there seem to be 3 books, as far as I can see, if I'm correct.
Yeah, out of the top 8, yeah.
In the top 8, yeah. So that's not bad going.
Yeah, the third book, number 3 is a children's book, How to Catch the Easter Bunny. One thing that I've noticed, which might seem trivial to some people, but is that the ones that are in the top, they have not only 3 categories that they have their books in, but the categories are relevant. And, I speak about this all the time, but relevancy is important. When it comes to the algorithm works so fast, it needs to know what is the best chance that what they search for is going to get them a sale. And so relevancy is number 1. And so, they're not doing this thing that people used to do, and unfortunately they still do, where they put their book in a category that's nothing related to their book, but because there's not a lot of competition in it, they're going to get that bestseller stamp. Who cares? Bestseller stamp isn't going to necessarily bring you in more money, but if you're not honest with the category and it's not relevant, you're going to confuse the algorithm and you're not going to get as many sales as you could.
That's very true. And I think we see that less now than we used to. I think Amazon are clamping down on it now. But there used to be a time when they were completely irrelevant categories for books. And of course, they got the #1 bestseller in that category, some of them, when the category was completely wrong. And you can see why Amazon want to avoid that, because for the customer, it annoys me if I'm looking in a category for certain books and there's books coming up that have nothing to do with what I'm looking for. It's not a good customer experience. So I can understand why Amazon is trying to avoid that. And I think it's working. It's not as bad as it used to be.
Right. And and another thing is Amazon is now, and they'll tell you this, they're changing categories. Like if you say your book is in this category and the algorithm says it doesn't belong to that category, you might notice that you're in categories that you didn't select.
Yes.
But it's because the algorithm thinks that that's more relevant to your book. They've seen that under this category, you're going to get more sales. So it's definitely it's important to make sure that you use all three, if possible, all three categories that you're allotted in KDP, but also, again, making sure that they're relevant. So these are, and I love the fact that, like you said, that in the top 8, there are 3 children's books. 2 of them are Easter.
Yes.
One of them is God's Masterpiece, an adventure in, I can't read the rest of it. And that's number 4. Yeah. And this one is dominating in all 3 categories it's in. But again, they're all, related. I mean, and relevant. Children's art books. I don't know. I can't see the inside. Based on the cover, it looks like that it does have art in it, like actual art, like they're painting and things like that. So that seems relevant. Inspirational books make sense. And then children's Christian emotions and feelings fiction. Again, so they all seem relevant.
That is a good category to be in, yeah. And imagine having a book at number 4. That would be the ultimate, wouldn't it? A little children's book. I'm really encouraged when I see this, because there's so many children's books in the top. And we're just looking at the first 8, but if you go further, you can see how many children's books there are in the top. I think it goes up to 50 on the first page.
Yeah. Well, right now I can see on screen number 12 is another children's book. It's again another Easter one.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely.
And they're not just the typical, normal books that you always see. There are some that I haven't seen before, and they've made it into the top 50, which again is encouraging to see, because it's obvious that Dr. Seuss will be in the top 50, but it's not only the really famous sort of children's book authors. There's also books that are probably, I'm not sure because I haven't checked whether they're self-published or not, but I can see how it could be a self-published book as well. Yeah. I think there's no reason for there not to be a self-published book among all of them.
I will tell you, as I'm looking at this, I also see in the top 8 books, 5, 6 of them are actually hardcovers.
Okay.
Which that means people are dishing out even more money. Because hardcovers obviously are going to cost more than a paperback, and yet they're in the top 8 of all books on Amazon, so they're selling a tremendous amount. And again, their prices range from it looks like the cheapest one is $14, and then this one number 6 is Careless People, and that one is $24, $23.09.
I've got a slightly different book on my screen. I think it's because I'm in the UK and
probably. Yep.
You're in the US. So I've got Atomic Habits at number 6. But I think roughly they'll be the same, and they change from day to day anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So on mine, number 7 is Atomic Habits. So again, and that just goes to show. So you'll want to look at whatever the whatever your marketplace, not necessarily your marketplace where you live, but the marketplace where you're targeting where your core audience is.
Yeah.
That's the one you're going to want to look at. So, yeah.
And I'm really glad you said that about the prices as well, because a lot of people think they have to price their books really cheaply to be able to compete. And I always say that's not the case. In fact, it can be the opposite. I think sometimes if you price your books higher, people perceive it as a higher value book rather than a lower value book. And you can see here, Atomic Habits is a hardcover, but it's $14.49, and another one, Purposeful Performance, $16.95. So they're not cheap, but they're selling. They're selling thousands of copies, and I wouldn't say that's a cheap price. And it kind of proves what I always say. I don't think people go on Amazon to buy cheap books. I think they go on Amazon to buy the books that they want to buy and the books that they want to read. So if you bear that in mind, price doesn't even come into it.
Right.
So
and a couple things I wanted to point out, especially with the purposeful performance that you brought up, is if you look, it only has 149 reviews. So many times people think that you have to have thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews in order to, right now it's number 7, because that's the other thing I wanted to point out. Just proof that the top 100 is always changing. If you can, for those people who are listening and you can't see it on my screen, but on my screen, it's number 5 at when I loaded this up, but down when you look, because I'm using the DS Amazon Quick View, I can see that it's actually now currently number 7 in books. So when I brought this page up, it was number 5 in books, but it's now number 7. And so that just shows that they're always changing. And so as you can see, especially as you get towards the top, they're not, being in first place, being in 7th place, it's still great, but it does show that they are changing and updating it regularly.
And I don't know if I could be wrong, but number 4, God's Masterpiece, the children's book, that doesn't seem to have any reviews at all.
No, agreed.
So there you go. It just goes to show that a book can be number 4 and not have any reviews. I'm just going to check if it's self-published or not, because that would be the icing on the cake. No, it does have a publisher. But who knows? It could be their own ISBN. You don't know.
And this one actually just launched 3 days ago. 3 days ago? No, yesterday, March 25th.
Wow.
Yeah, March 25th. Amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. But yeah, like you said, the just because it has a publisher name doesn't mean that it wasn't self-published. It just means that, they bought their own ISBN.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, the next 3, 5, 6, and 7, they're the ones that have the white backgrounds.
Yeah.
There's at least some things that pop on it, obviously. Most of them are the title, because I believe, let me see. Yeah, they're all nonfiction, which is another thing that kind of makes them stand out. That, why they're maybe not as bright and colorful as nonfiction books tend to be, have a more, I don't want to say sterile look to them.
It's minimalist.
It's very minimalist, right? Because it's not about, because you're not trying to sell the characters, because there are no characters. You're selling the topic, and so that's when the title is that much more important. The title, the author name, depending on how well they're known in that industry.
Yeah.
But again, especially this number 7 book, the Purposeful Performance, the fact that it only has 149 reviews.
Yes.
Again, and like you said with the other one, as a hardcover children's book, is in 4th place and has no reviews from what we can see. Again, just shows how, there's not necessarily one way to see success in this industry. It's all, the best way is, and we talked about this before, create a book that people want.
Yes.
Yeah. And make sure that the quality is good, and you'll get the word of mouth. You'll get, you'll get the visibility that you need. Mm-hmm. And again, we don't know what ads they're running or anything like that to get, more visibility, but either way, they're in the top 10. It's worth it, especially, none of these are rock bottom prices. So they're definitely making profit.
Definitely. They might have had a launch strategy.
Mhm.
They might have had people signing up in advance for their books. So
Right.
we don't,
Pre-order.
unfortunately, we can't see that, how they've done it, but whatever they've done, it's worked. It's worked really well for them.
So what do you think of this, the Hippity Hoppity Little Bunny book? The ears on the bunny rabbit are actually covering up the word little bunny. If
I can't even read that it says bunny. It could be anything. It could be pony.
That's what I'm saying. If a follower had sent me this cover, and again, this just goes to show that, there's not one way to do it. I mean, you can see success in different ways, but
Yeah.
I would have been like, no, you've got to be able to see the title, on the cover.
Absolutely.
But again, this is just they're just by looking at the cover, it's very clear that their goal is to make the character, the bunny on it. That's what's important is, that bunny is selling it, not the title name, just the bunny. And again, I mean, they're in eighth in all books, so it's definitely working. And it's a board book, so obviously we can't really compete with that.
No.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting because, like I said, if someone had sent me that cover, I would have immediately deterred them from hiding the title.
Absolutely. I agree. I would have said, you can't read the title. I'm surprised it even passed Amazon's scrutiny, because they usually want the title to be on the cover or on the spine. Maybe it's on the spine, and that's why they got away with it. I don't know.
Well, the other thing that probably is limiting, or the reason why it got through, is because it's a board book. It clearly wasn't done through KDP.
Oh, it wasn't KDP. That's right. Yes.
So, it was done through a publisher, and, they're doing it not through KDP, but they're doing it through probably an Amazon seller's account or something along those lines. So
interesting, though.
And then we can scroll down. We can see the new releases. It'll show you the top 3. So again, the new release categories are books that have launched in the last 30 days, and you can, if you wanted to, you can click on that and see what kind of books are coming out right now, and how they're doing. So I do like that, they only show you the top 3 in new releases, but I do like how they've got, the first one is Suzanne Collins' book, and then right next to that is the children's Christian book, and then right next to that is the nonfiction book. So there's, just with those top 3, it's a wide array. So again, it just shows that it really doesn't matter necessarily what type of book you're putting out. You have just as much chance at seeing success. Again, that one of the main reasons why I like to look at the top 100 when I'm coming up with ideas is to see what the public, what buying customers are really interested in right now.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, that's what I like to look at as well. When I look at the top 100, I have a look and see how many children's books are there, how many low content books can I see, how many are nonfiction, how many are fiction. So and even though it changes from day to day, roughly it tends to be the same sort of numbers, which is there's a bit of everything. So
I was smirking because I was actually going to bring up something very similar, which is I think it's very important to mention that I do suggest looking at the top 100 if you're interested in a new niche or whatever. But don't just look at it just once, because again, you're just getting a snapshot of how things are selling in, at that particular, not just that day, at that time. I mean, you saw, in this one day how things are changing, with the rankings. So, again, it's something that I would look into, maybe once a month looking at, and then once you start doing it, you can start seeing trends. Because if you look at this right now and you're like, I was thinking about writing a children's book, let me see how children's books are doing and what kind of children's books people are interested in. And then by the time you write it and get it illustrated and publish it, it might not be as hot. You know what I mean? So especially if you're trying to write based on, trends that are happening now. You know what I mean? Like things in pop culture or whatever. It's really important to know the industry as a whole, like I said, over a period of time, so you can get a better feel as to what in general, because after a while, it doesn't take long. You do, 2-3 months, and you'll start seeing, things are moving around, but you'll see what type of books are usually in the top 100. And again, it's gonna change quarter to quarter as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting you said that. I probably look at this once a week. That's how nerdy I am, because I love looking at books. There are times when I don't look at it once a week, but on average, I would say I look at it almost weekly. And even though it can vary, this is, the point I was trying to make earlier, even though it can vary, the books change position and whatever, but overall, if you look at it over a long period of time, I would say you're looking at it over a year, I would say that it does tend to be a really good mix of things. There are always children's books in the top 100. There are always fiction books. There are always nonfiction books.
Right.
And it's quite, I would say, the sort of ratio from one book to the other, they tend to stay the same, more or less. I would say maybe 2 out of or 3 out of 8 are children's books generally, not just this week, not just today, but they tend to be that number. Sometimes it does change. Sometimes you see more fiction than nonfiction, and particularly when there's a lot of fiction that's suddenly come out or that's been released, and obviously they rise to the top quite quickly.
Movies and things like that.
Yeah. That's right, yes. So those things do have an impact on, what's in the top 100. But overall, I can honestly say that it's been pretty consistent throughout the year. There are always lots of children's books. The one thing I have noticed recently that there's more of is coloring books. I think because of Coco Wyo, I think that has really increased. So I think just for that reason, because they've become so popular, there is a lot more of that in the top 100. And there's always 1 or 2 activity books as well.
Yes. Yeah, there are. And like you said, throughout the year, things change, things fluctuate. Obviously, when you get towards the beginning of the year, there's going to be a lot more fitness type books that'll end up in the top 100. And then when you get closer to the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, those kind of start falling off the top 100. So, there are definitely things that, as you're looking at it over a year, and as long as we've been doing this, that you definitely see trends that come and go. But there are also a lot of consistency within what the general public are really interested in. You can very easily find, there might be some hot things that are a new movie came out, and so those types of books that are related to that type of theme might be towards the top of the top 100, but the type of books that are in the top 100 are pretty consistent across the board. As far as I don't think there's any genre where you don't have a chance to be in the top 100. It's not like it's limited. So many times I hear people say that, top 100's dominated by the big names. We've already proven that's not true, and we've literally only gotten to the top 10. And looking at more, getting what you were saying about children's books. There's a couple more, number 12 and number 14. So within the top 15 books, 5 children's books. That's like I said, one is a board book, but everything else, they're paperbacks, hardcovers. So, and that's another thing. People that create children's books and only do it as paperbacks, they don't do it as hardcovers because they think, people aren't going to want to pay for that, or, whatever. Parents, grandparents, I can speak from example, from experience, that grandparents will spend more money on their grandkids because a hardcover book's going to last longer.
Yes.
And this one right here, I'm going to tell you number 13, well, 14, is, I will guarantee you, is not through KDP, because their hardcover price is $5.98. So that's definitely must be a big name publisher where they're doing it in bulk as opposed to, print on demand. But
Yeah, definitely. But I find all of that really encouraging. Like you said, they're not just big names in the top 100. There's all sorts. And I think that's one of the reasons why I keep looking at the top 100, because I'm trying to, not that I need any motivation, but it's very motivational and encouraging to see that, because you think, I can do that. I could have a book in the top 100. There's no reason why my book can't be up there with those other books, because as we've seen as well, there's a lot wrong with some of the books, in terms of cover design and in terms of other things that that you would think, well, that's not how I would do it, but they seem to be selling regardless. So I think a lot of it is in the promotion and in the marketing of books as well. And I think that is basically, it would be very unusual for a book with no marketing and no promotion to reach the top 100. But there are so many ways there's so many ways you could do it. It doesn't have to be ads all the time. There's other ways you can promote your books, and that's a topic for another episode, I guess.
Absolutely. And as we just round out the top 20, here's one right here. And again, I'm not slamming anything. These books are doing amazing. So, but like this one, I could barely read the cover, what the title is, but
which one's that? Number 17?
The one, the Frozen
River. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but again, it's doing amazingly well. It's number 17 in all books. It's number 1 in science, number 1 in biographical historical fiction, and number 1 in women sleuths books. So again, it's definitely, it's found its niche, which is great. Yeah. I do love that it's not until we get to number 18 do we get like a well-known children's book, and this one is Pete the Cat.
Yeah.
And the Easter Basket. So again, it's another Easter themed book. But so you've got Pete the Cat at number 18. You've got the Little Blue Trucks Springtime, which is the Little Blue Trucks is a series.
That's there all the time.
Right. And then number 20 is actually a Learn to Write workbook. And so if you notice in the top 20, there was no Dr. Seuss.
Absolutely.
And so again, there's these books, and I'm trying to see all of them. None of them say that they're independently published. So none of them say that I've seen. So people have probably either they're not independently published, they're not through KDP, or they bought their own ISBNs. Oh, this is Random House. This one right here. But which I told you I knew it was because it's a hardcover at $6. So I knew it had to be a big name. Yeah. So, and that one's Simon and Schuster. So again, but even workbook in the top 20, and it's only, it's 84 pages long, and it's selling for $5.26. So again, there's so much potential. And then of course you got the Very Hungry Caterpillar at number 22. That one's always in the top 50.
Always.
Yep.
And I could be wrong, but I think Crystal Radke, I don't know how to pronounce her name, with the Learn to Write workbook, I think that was a self-published one at the beginning. I'm not 100% sure, but I know there was one particular self-publisher who then got picked up by a big publisher, and I think it was that one, but I can't be 100% sure, so I'm not going to say it's that one. But it just goes to show.
Yeah, and this book, it's got 86,000 reviews, but it was also published in August of 2019.
Yes.
And it's still at number 20. So my guess is they probably have done a recent run of ads or whatever. Obviously school just went into session You know,
That book is always
after
there.
the holidays. Yeah, after the holidays. So, yeah.
That
But yeah,
book is always in the top 50,
in top 50,
within the top 50. Every time I look, it's there. So it's not moving.
And then we've got, I mean, like I said, I don't want this episode to be too long. So I'm just scrolling down a little bit faster. But again, we've got 3 more children's books. You've got the Hungry Caterpillar, I Love You Like No Otter, and the Rainbow Fish. Those, I Love You Like No Otter. That one's been in the top for, the last few years.
Yes.
And then at number is this? Number 26, it looks like. 25, 26, depending on. This was published last year, and this is a coloring book, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And this one was independently published.
Yes.
And it's 88 pages, and it's currently selling at, $8. It's got 4,400 reviews. Yeah. So
I'm actually in their Facebook group, and this is what promotion does for you, because they are just promoting it so well, and they've built their brand. They were actually picked up by Penguin Random House, and the first time I saw one of their books actually in person was around the corner from here, because Penguin Random House is actually not far from where I live. They've got a big industrial unit there, and they were independently published. They were so successful. Their books were always in the top 100, and they got picked up. And they're actually designers from Thailand that got together and decided to create these books. And to me, that's a really good success story, even though they copied the designs from somebody else.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of controversy around that, of course, but they were able to make it their own. So that's definitely a success story there. And it goes to show that anybody could do that if they know how to promote their books in the right way.
Any more of these that are jumping out at you in the top?
Well, the thing that's jumping out at me, as usual, is how many children's books there are.
Yeah.
And I always come across, I don't know if it's at number 38 for you, but for me, it's at number 38, Don't Believe Everything You Think. And that's a self-published book. And I love that book because of how simple it is. And I don't know how he managed to get in the top 100, because he hasn't got a big online presence. I know he's got, I think, Facebook and Instagram, but he's not very active on there. So I'm not quite sure how he was able to jump so high in the charts. But whatever he did it really well. And that's a self-published book. He's an independently published author. And it's also a book that's being copied so much. When I type in Don't Believe Everything You Think in the search bar, I don't know whether it's still the case. They might have shut some of them down now, but there were about 20 or 30 books that had the same title at one point. Yeah. So that was a really interesting one for me. And I keep seeing it in the top 100 all the time. Sometimes it's at number 50 something. Sometimes it's at number 30 something. I think not long ago it was number 14 or something crazy like that. So that's one that I follow.
Yeah. And but yeah, like and again, just like what we were saying early on with the nonfiction, again, the book cover itself is pretty minimalistic. It's the title is the most important thing, and then a little bit of basically almost like pencil drawn imagery.
Yeah.
And that's really it. That makes you even more intrigued, especially with a title like that makes you even more intrigued to look at the book, look at the inside, pick it up if you have it in person.
And you can't even read the subtitle. It's so small.
No, it is.
So, but it's a very, very popular book.
And then again, you've got, more children's books, again, Easter themed. You've got more of the coloring books. But yeah, I agree with you that, it really surprises me time and time again with how many children's books are in the top 100. And just, I mean, even within top 50,
Yes.
I mean, right now we're at, 44. Finally, here's a cookbook, again, another children's book. And, but then there's, obviously you've got your fiction books.
Have you noticed how few fiction books there are compared to nonfiction and other types of books?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not as, like I showed at the very beginning, if you look in Kindle books, it's dominated by, top 100 is dominated by romance.
Yeah.
And that's not the case with physical books. And so, it's definitely, it's more of a wide variety. There's more nonfiction, there's more children's books. There's, like you said, coloring books and workbooks. You do have, like, you have novels. Here's another great example is The Ageless Brain, which is number 48.
Yeah.
The hardcover selling for $26.99, and it has 2 reviews.
Yes.
And it's still within the top 50 of all books on Amazon.
I know. Again, it's amazing.
You could go into all the different categories, the subcategories and kind of drill down based on whatever type of book you want to create and see within that niche, what are some consistencies with the covers. You can, look at other people's reviews and see what people like and don't like. So looking at the overall top 100, I like to do just to get a feel for the overall buying audience and see what genres and niches they're interested in. And then, whether it's I'm looking at a new niche to jump into, typically with me, it's a niche I'm already in. It's just a matter of, do I want to create more books in that niche? And then again, you can get ideas. And it's, like I said, it's so reassuring, I think, for the people just starting out in self-publishing and creating books, that there's so much potential within whatever niche you want to go in. Because, if nothing else you've learned from looking at just the top 50 is it's not just, I have to write a romance book. Matter of fact, if you look, I don't think I saw one romance book in the whole thing.
No.
In the top 50.
No, there wasn't. That's a very good point, actually.
Yeah, even like I said, even cookbooks. This one might be romance. I Loved You First. It's a sister's story. It's a hardcover. But yeah, the number of nonfiction books, the number of children's books. And again, while yes, there are, the big name, Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, yes, they're in here, but there were a lot that were not listed. And I think I only saw maybe 2 or 3 that were Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, in that top 50, which means that these are either smaller publishing houses or they're independently published. And again, you don't have to have crazy number of reviews. You don't have to put your price down, rock bottom to get sales. And again, it really comes down to, getting visibility on your books, putting out, first of all, creating something that the readers want, I shouldn't say readers, creating something that the buyers want. Because again, coloring books, puzzle books, things like that are included. Right here, you got a recipe book. So creating what people want, making sure that it's a good quality content. So that way you get those, the word of mouth, you get, other people talking about it.
Absolutely. And I just love researching in the top 100 as well. And I go even further than what we've done today. I look at the authors. When I see something that stands out, I go on their author page and then I type in their name into Google and see if they've got any social media accounts. Because what I try to do is I try to find out how come they are in the top 100 out of so many books. What have they done to elevate their book to that level? And I find that very interesting. And sometimes you can find out lots of things, like you can find out whether they're self-published or not self-published. Have they got a big publisher behind them that obviously that helps. But there's so many that I find all the time that are self-published, that they're just people like us. And when you go on their social media and on their whatever else you can find on the internet, you can see that they are just like us, and they're just promoting through their social media, or probably TikTok. That's been the other thing that I've noticed has really propelled some of these books. But they're all things that we can do. And that's what I find so encouraging. There's nothing here that, unless you have been picked up by a big publisher, but even they sometimes only pick you up because you've already been making sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
and I was going to say, even when you get a traditionally published deal, you know, one of the misconceptions is that that the publisher is going to do all the promotion for you. That is not the case. You know, you still have to promote the book. And so, it's very, very seldom will, from my experience, someone will luck into the top 100. You know, there was work that was put into it. And so you definitely need to, like you said, I mean, whether you want to dive deep into, looking at someone's, looking at the author and seeing what they're doing, but, just getting some ideas on what other people are doing that are, leading them to get to the top 100.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I find it really interesting. I find it exciting. There's always something that catches my eye, and I think, wow, how well have they done? And as I said earlier, the good thing about it is that they are all things that we can replicate if we just know how. I mean, sometimes I don't know how they've done it, but sometimes it stands out. Sometimes you think, yes, I know how they've done it. They've had a TikTok video that's gone viral, or they've just had something with their book has resonated with people. And that's why it's so important to make, like you said, books that people want to buy and that people love. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the one thing that they didn't do is they didn't publish and pray. So, they definitely need to put effort into, like you said, researching it, making sure that there's actually an audience for what you want to create. And again, if you have a story that is just, or a book that you need to want to write that's just touched you and you have to write it, that's fine. But I think it's really important to set realistic expectations, so knowing what the audience wants, and if what you're creating is what they want. If it's not, then at least okay, I'm creating this because I want to create it, but I'm not going to expect to be in the top 100. But if the audience is interested in it, then just again, find ways to promote it. It doesn't necessarily have to cost you money. It could very well just cost you time by putting things on social media or whatever. It really comes down to knowing your audience, creating what they want, and then sharing it with them and hoping that and trying to encourage them to share it with others.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you said. And I feel quite excited now to start another book.
Yeah, you and me both. This has been another great Mastermind, Nuria. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's Mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leave us a review and let us know what you thought. Until next time, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Corby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.